Click for IB Biology. We're looking at interaction within our community of species, and here we're going to look at the impact of mutualism and then of invasive species. Two different ideas. There's a blank version of this presentation down in the description. You can add your own notes to that as we go. There's a 10-question quiz with answers, and of course there's an AI prompt that you can use in a chatbot to give yourself some individualized learning questions. Let's look at mutualism in 3 examples. The first one is that of the legumes with root nodules. So legumes includes plants such as peas, and within their roots they have these, you can probably see in the image, these nodular structures, and they contain what we would call nitrogen fixing bacteria, and that is to say that they can take atmospheric nitrogen and eventually create nitrates. And the significance of that is that nitrate, of course, is essential in the synthesis of amino acids. But to synthesize the amino acids, we're also going to need a simple sugar to start with, like photosynthesis. We'll create the carbohydrates, and together then these go through metabolic pathways to synthesize the amino acid. So the advantage is that the legumes can grow on soil which is nitrogen poor, so they can outcompete other plants on nitrogen poor soils. So the legumes will grow on soils where the nitrate is in very, very low concentrations or non-existent. And the reason for that is because they have on board within their root system different types of bacteria which can take atmospheric nitrogen, fix it through a number of pathways to nitrate, and that allows them to make amino acids for their growth. The mutualistic nature of the relationship is that the legumes benefits from the nitrate, and the bacteria in the roots benefit from the carbohydrates provided by the plant. So they both benefit, which is, of course, mutualism. And in our second example, we have orchids with mycorrhiza. Mycorrhiza are a type of fungi. And orchids, which we can see in the image here, you can see them growing on, in this case, it's actually on some rocks, although very commonly we see orchids growing on the outside of trees, and this is what we call epiphytic behavior. So it's not rooted in the soil, and so it's compromised with a lack of nutrients. Now, the orchids have very, very small seeds, and they usually, when they land on a tree trunk or onto a rock, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the nutrients to germinate. And so it's with the infection of the mycorrhiza fungi, the mycorrhiza fungi are able to break down the localized nutrients in those tree trunks and on rocks where the conditions are very poor for the seed germination, and they supply the seed with the necessary nutrient to support its germination. Once the orchid has established itself, then as any plant can do, it can do photosynthesis and will provide the glucose to the fungi in the mutualistic relationship which will then exist between them. So next time you see an orchid growing on a tree, it's probably got mycorrhiza fungi in its root system, enabling it to take advantage of that particular habitat. And then we have Zooxanthellae and hard corals. Now the Zooxanthellae are these green structures here. They're unicellular photosynthetic cells, and of course by doing photosynthesis then they too can produce glucose and carbohydrate and so forth, but they live within the coral structure. This is the coral structure up here, and that coral structure provides the Zooxanthellae with protection, a protected environment, not just from the idea of grazing, of being eaten by other animals, but also from the harsh marine environment in which they are developing. And so that's their benefit, that the Zooxanthellae are being protected by the corals. And corals also, to a certain extent, provide some nutrients to the zooxanthellae for their growth. In return, of course, as is the case with photosynthetic organisms, the zooxanthellae give the corals carbohydrate from photosynthesis. So the zooxanthellae get protection and basic nutrients, and the coral gets the carbohydrate. So these three examples of mutualism that one might find. If we move to the idea of invasive species, so an invasive species is an organism that is not endemic. Endemic means that this is a plant or an organism which naturally comes from a particular location. So the example that I'm showing you here, this is the water hyacinth, and in my particular location on the rivers and lakes of Thailand, water hyacinth are very famous. Not our major rivers such as the Chao Phraya River. Often the river becomes blocked by rapid growth of water hyacinth, so rapid that it can get involved in eutrophication processes, but if nothing else, in actually blocking the waterways. The water hyacinth itself was introduced into Thailand and is actually native of South America. And so the water hyacinth is the invasive species. It comes from South America via Europe, I believe, and finds that the Thai rivers have got very high nutrient levels on which it can thrive in its growth, and it outcompetes local species. So we get rapid growth from the very efficient utilization of the available minerals. And in this particular case, it shades out other local plants, it crowds them out of that, and it alters the ecosystem dynamic there. And we have a loss of biodiversity. The natural plants and animals which should be growing in these river systems are outcompeted. And there can be economic impact, particularly as it relates to fish populations. So control methods various control methods have been attempted and introduced, and we will study those as a later example of biological control. So that's two examples of mutualism and invasive species as examples of factors affecting community structure. So there's a link to the next video, the channel link, which you can use to subscribe, please, and the playlist for our populations and community topic.